Single mom was shot protecting a stranger, unaware he was the mafia boss himself. The smell of industrial bleach and cheap lemon polish was so thick, it felt like a film on my skin. I clocked out at 2:17 in the morning, my feet aching inside worn-out sneakers, my whole body humming with the kind of exhaustion that goes bone deep. This was my second job, the night auditor at the downtown Fairgate Hotel, a place that tried to look fancy but mostly just smelled tired. I pushed through the heavy glass doors, the humid night air hitting me like a warm, damp towel. My real life was waiting for me, my only life. Mason. My 6-year-old son was staying with Mrs. Petrov, our elderly neighbor who probably needed more sleep than I did, but she was kind and, more importantly, she accepted the few dollars I could spare. My other job, waitressing at the diner, barely covered our rent. The hotel gig was supposed to be for bills, for medicine. Lately, it felt like I was just treading water, and the water was getting deeper. All I wanted was to crawl into bed next to Mason, to feel his small back rise and fall against my chest. But the fridge was empty. I'd promised him his favorite cereal for breakfast. The corner store on 8th Avenue was the only thing open, its fluorescent lights cutting a harsh white square into the darkness. It was a block out of my way, but the promise of his smile in the morning was worth the extra 5 minutes. I pulled my thin jacket tighter. The streets were quiet, too quiet, with that specific emptiness that only happens in the deep hours of the night. I pushed inside, the little bell over the door chirping weakly. The air was stale, smelling of dust and old coffee. I grabbed a small carton of milk, a box of Captain Crunch, and an apple for myself that already looked past its prime. I was standing at the counter, counting out change, when the bell chirped again. I didn't look up, just focused on the coins in my palm. Then I heard the click. It was a sound you don't recognize until you've heard it, and then you never forget it, the metallic slide of a gun. "Don't move," a voice rasped. It was sharp, panicked. I froze. My blood turned to ice. My first thought, my only thought, Mason. I slowly lifted my head. 2 men, both in dark hoodies and ski masks, were just outside the store's entrance. The clerk, a teenage kid, had his hands halfway in the air. But the men weren't looking at him. They weren't even looking at me. Their guns were pointed at a man standing on the sidewalk, just outside the glass door. He was tall, dressed in a dark, expensive-looking coat that seemed out of place in this neighborhood. His back was mostly to me, but I could see his profile. Dark hair, a strong jaw. He hadn't moved. He just stood there, watching them, his hands loose at his sides. He looked calm, which somehow made it all more terrifying. "Give it up, Moretti," the first gunman growled. The man in the coat didn't answer. "Do it now," the second one yelled, his voice cracking with a nervous energy that scared me more than the first man's coldness. I saw it happen in slow motion. The second gunman's arm tensed. He shifted his aim just slightly, toward the man's chest. I wasn't thinking. There was no thought, no plan. It was pure, stupid instinct, the same instinct that had me grabbing Mason's hand when a car sped too fast down our street. I moved. I dropped the milk and the cereal and threw myself toward the glass door, toward the man in the dark coat. I think I shouted, a sound that was half scream, half grunt. I collided with his side just as the world exploded in a deafening bang. A fist made of pure fire slammed into my left shoulder. The force of it spun me around, and the ground came up to meet me. I hit the pavement hard, the breath knocked out of me. My first sensation was confusion. Then the pain hit. It was a white-hot, searing agony that blotted out everything. I gasped, but I couldn't seem to get any air. I heard more shouting, another shot, the sound of running feet, then silence. I was lying on my back, staring up at the flickering sign of the corner store. My shoulder was wet. I tried to move my arm, and a fresh wave of agony made me cry out. "She's bleeding. She's bleeding badly." The voice was deep, laced with a controlled fury. A shadow fell over me. It was the man in the dark coat. He was kneeling beside me. His face now clear in the awful fluorescent light. He was younger than I thought, maybe in his early 30s. His eyes were the darkest I had ever seen, and they were wide with a look of stunned disbelief. He ripped off his coat and pressed it hard against my shoulder. I screamed. I know, he said, his voice rough. You're going to be okay. He pulled a phone from his pocket with his free hand, his thumb moving with blurring speed. He didn't dial 911. I'm hit, 8th and Elmwood. No, I'm fine. He snapped. It's a civilian, a woman. She's shot badly. He paused, listening. I don't care who you have to move. Get doctor. Eris here now. I want a full surgical team at the clinic. And I want this street cleaned. No sirens, no police. Do it. He hung up without saying goodbye. His dark eyes locked back on mine. My vision was starting to tunnel, the edges of the world turning gray. Who are you? I whispered. My lips felt numb. Stay with me, he commanded. He leaned closer, his hand still applying agonizing pressure to my shoulder. What's your name? Riley, I slurred. My son, Mason, I have to... You'll see your son again, he said, his voice a low, fierce promise. You just have to stay awake. Look at me, Riley. I tried, but the pain was too much. The world was too heavy. The last thing I saw was his face, etched with a strange, cold fury and a baffling gentleness. Then the darkness finally pulled me under. I woke up to beeping. A slow, steady, rhythmic beep. My first coherent thought was that it was the most annoying sound in the world. My second was that my entire left side felt like it was packed in hot cement. I cracked my eyes open. The light was soft, indirect. I wasn't in a hospital. Not any hospital I'd ever been in. The room was vast, the walls a pale, calming gray. I was in a bed that felt like a cloud, the sheets impossibly soft against my skin. The beeping was coming from a sleek, futuristic monitor beside me. An IV bag was strung up on a chrome pole, a clear liquid dripping slowly into my arm. This wasn't Fairgate General. This was a 5-star hotel. Ah, you're awake. A man in a crisp white coat stood in the doorway. He was older, with kind eyes and silver hair. He looked more like a university professor than a doctor. Where am I? My voice was a dry croak. You're in a private surgical suite, he said, walking over to check the monitor. You were shot, Miss Jameson. The bullet passed through your left deltoid. It was clean, but you lost a significant amount of blood. We operated. You're going to be just fine. Miss Jameson, he knew my name. How did I get here? My mind was a fog. I remembered the store, the man in the coat, the pain. You were brought in 3 days ago, the doctor said, avoiding the question. 3 days? A bolt of pure, undiluted panic shot through me, stronger than any painkiller. 3 days? My son. Oh my God, Mason, where's my son? I have to go. I tried to sit up. A lightning bolt of pain shot from my shoulder down to my fingertips, and I collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. Please, Miss Jameson, Riley, you must be calm, the doctor said, gently placing a hand on my good arm. Your son is safe. He's with your neighbor, a Mrs. Petrov. I stared at him. How do you know that? The gentleman who brought you in, he said. His hesitation so slight I almost missed it. He wanted to ensure everything was taken care of. The man from the store, I asked. The one I pushed? Who is he? Did he get shot? He was not injured, the doctor said smoothly. He paid for everything, Miss Jameson, this suite, the surgery, your continued care. He left instructions that you were to be given the best of everything. Paid for it? I looked around the absurdly luxurious room. This surgery, probably cost more than I made in a year, in 5 years. Who is he? I need to thank him. And I need to tell him I can't possibly pay him back. He wished to remain anonymous. The doctor said. His smile was polite, but his eyes were closed. It was the kind of professional wall you can't break. Where are the police? I asked, the strangeness of the situation finally crashing in on me. I was shot. There was a robbery. Haven't the police been here? Don't they need my statement? There were no police. Miss Jameson, no report was filed. The silence in the room was absolute. No nurses yelling in the hallway. No squeak of cartwheels. No roommates snoring. Just the quiet. Steady beep of the monitor. This wasn't a hospital. This was a cage. A very soft, very expensive cage. I need my phone, I said, my voice hardening. I need to call my son. The doctor nodded, retrieved my purse from a drawer, and handed it to me. My phone was inside, fully charged. My fingers trembled as I dialed Mrs. Petrov's number. Riley, dearest, are you all right? Her voice was thin and reedy with worry. I'm okay, Mrs. P. I'm so sorry. I had an accident. I'm in the hospital. Oh, you poor thing. I was so worried. But the man who called, he said you were safe. He sounded very important. He even had groceries delivered for me and Mason. So much food, Riley. And he sent cash for my trouble he said. My blood ran cold again. A man called you? Yes, the first night. He said he was a friend of yours from the hotel. He said you had a fall and that you'd be out of touch for a few days. He was very polite. He knew where I lived. He knew my neighbor. He knew my son's name. Is Mason there? I asked, my throat tight. Mommy! His small voice came on the line, and the dam inside me broke. I choked back a sob. Hi, baby. Hi, my sweet boy. I'm okay. I miss you so much. I miss you. Mommy, Mrs. Petrov made pancakes. Did you fall down? Yeah, baby. I lied, the word tasting like ash. Mommy was just clumsy and took a bad fall. But I'm okay. I'll be home really soon. I promise. Be good for Mrs. P. I love you. Love you too, he said, and handed the phone back. I ended the call and looked at the doctor. I'm leaving. Now. Riley, that is not advisable, he said, his kind professor demeanor firmly in place. You've had major surgery. You need at least another 48 hours of observation. I don't care, I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. The room spun, and the pain in my shoulder made black spots dance in my vision. But I clenched my jaw against it. I have to get home to my son. I can't lose my jobs. I'm leaving. I stood up, gripping the edge of the bed, my body shaking with weakness and adrenaline. The doctor watched me, his expression unreadable. He didn't try to stop me. He just sighed, as if he'd expected this. Very well, he said. I'll have a nurse bring you some clothes. We repurposed the ones you were wearing. They had blood on them. A car will be waiting to take you home whenever you're ready. A car, of course. I didn't know who this man was. I didn't know why he was hiding, but I knew two things. He was dangerous. And for some reason, he had saved my life. I watched the city lights slide by from the back of a black town car that smelled of new leather. The driver didn't speak. He just opened the door for me and drove, as if he knew my address without asking. When we pulled up to my rundown apartment building, he got out and opened my door, handing me a small, heavy envelope. From Mr. Eris, he said. It was the doctor's name. Inside was my prescription for painkillers and antibiotics, and a thick wad of cash, $100 bills, at least $2,000. I can't take this, I said, trying to shove it back. The driver simply looked past me. Have a good evening, ma'am. He got back in the car and drove away, leaving me standing on the cracked pavement, weak, terrified, and holding more money than I'd seen in one place in my entire life. I limped up the 3 flights of stairs, my body screaming with every step. I let myself into the apartment. It was quiet. Mrs. Petrov had left a note saying Mason was asleep in my bed. I crept into the bedroom. There he was, my little boy, his face soft in the glow of his rocket ship nightlight, his small hand curled around his worn-out teddy bear. I sank to my knees beside the bed, my good arm stroking his hair, and I just breathed him in. The smell of milk and soap and sleep. He was safe. The relief was so profound it was almost as painful as the gunshot. I sat there for a long time before I finally, painfully, got to my feet. I walked into the kitchen, the envelope of money feeling like a lead weight in my hand. The red stamped envelopes were piled on the counter where I'd left them, the eviction notice, the final warning from the power company. I opened the medicine cabinet, and my heart stopped. Mason's inhaler, the little blue one. I shook it. It was almost empty. Maybe 1 or 2 puffs left. His prescription had run out last week, and I hadn't had the money to refill it. I looked at the money in my hand. I looked at the empty inhaler. I tucked Mason into his own bed, hissing in pain as I lifted him. I lied. Just as I had on the phone, Mommy just tripped and hurt her arm. Baby, I'm okay. He looked at the thick white bandage covering my shoulder, his eyes wide, but he was too sleepy to argue. He just nodded and curled up, asleep again in seconds. I sat at the kitchen table for the rest of the night, my throbbing shoulder a dull counterpoint to the racing of my mind. Who was that man? And why? After all this, did I still feel like I was in more danger than when I was bleeding on the pavement? I didn't know that, miles away. The man whose face I couldn't forget was watching a grainy security feed on a wall of monitors. Luca Moretti watched the woman, Riley, pace her tiny kitchen. He watched her check the locks on her door, her face pale and drawn. He had seen the footage from the corner store 100 times. He'd watched her throw herself in front of him, a stranger, a civilian. He'd never seen anything like it. In his world, every action was a calculation. Every favor had a price. Loyalty was bought, and betrayal was expected. He was stunned, and her sacrifice had come at the worst possible time. The botched hit at the store was proof. Someone in his inner circle had betrayed him, sold his location. He was vulnerable. And showing any interest in this woman, this brave, reckless woman, would be painting a target on her back. He had to stay away. He had to let her go back to her life. But as he watched her on the monitor, clutching her son's empty inhaler, he knew he couldn't. The next few days were a blur of quiet, managed panic. I called the diner and the hotel, feeding them the same lie, a bad fall, a sprained shoulder. I begged them not to take me off the schedule. I used the anonymous money to pay the rent, to turn the power back on, to buy Mason 3 new inhalers. I hid the rest of it in a coffee can at the back of the freezer. It felt dirty. I healed, slowly, painfully, but the fear didn't fade. I felt watched. I'd be walking Mason to the bus stop for school, and I'd see the same dark sedan parked a block away, or I'd be at the grocery store, and I'd feel a prickle on the back of my neck, a sense of being observed. I told myself I was paranoid, that it was the trauma. I didn't know that Luca had 2 of his best men watching me, a silent, invisible guard. One night, about a week after I'd come home, I was walking Mason home from Mrs. Petrov's. It was late, and I was helping him with his jacket. He was telling me about a drawing he'd made of a blue lion. I looked up, and for a second, I thought I saw him, the man from the store, standing in the shadows across the street, just watching, his dark coat, his intense stare. I blinked, and he was gone, a trick of the light. But miles away, in a car parked in an alley, Luca Moretti watched Riley Jameson fuss over her son's zipper. He watched her brush the hair out of the boy's eyes, her movement tender even as she winced from the pain in her shoulder. He watched her pull the boy into a hug before they walked into their building. He'd spent his life building an empire of fear and calculated power. He'd never protected anything he hadn't owned. But as he watched the woman and her son disappear inside, an unfamiliar emotion stirred deep in his chest. It was hot and sharp and fierce. It wasn't debt. It wasn't obligation. It was protectiveness, and it was going to be a problem. Pain is a funny thing. It's loud when it first happens, an explosion that demands all your attention. But the healing, that's a different kind of pain. It's a dull, grinding ache that settles into your bones, a constant reminder. After a week, my shoulder had downgraded from a raging fire to a hot, throbbing coal, but it was always there, especially when I moved. And I had to move. I plastered a smile on my face, pulled on my black polyester hotel uniform, and winced as the fabric scraped over the thick bandages. I'd used the last of the doctor's supplies. Soon I'd have to figure out how to get more without raising questions. I looked in the mirror. I was pale, with dark circles under my eyes that no amount of cheap concealer could hide. I looked haunted. I felt haunted. "You're sure you're ready, Riley, Maria?" one of the other night auditors asked as I slid into the high chair behind the front desk. Her eyes were kind, but sharp. She didn't miss much. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a brighter smile. "Just a nasty fall, you know? Slipped on the stairs at my building." She said, not sounding convinced. "Well, you missed some excitement. We had a guy in here asking about you a few days ago, while you were out sick." My blood, which had been moving sluggishly, gave a cold, hard jolt. "Asking about me? What kind of guy?" "Fancy," she said, tapping her pen on the counter. "Like, really fancy. Italian suit. Expensive watch. Didn't look like he belonged in this place. He asked what days you worked, said he was an old friend. I told him we couldn't give out employee schedules. He just nodded, smiled this smile that didn't touch his eyes, and left. An old friend. I didn't have any old friends, and certainly none who wore Italian suits. The paranoia I'd been trying to suppress came rushing back, thick and suffocating. The black sedan, the feeling of being watched, the man in the dark coat. Did he leave a name? I asked, trying to sound casual. "Nope, just watched." She shivered. "Gave me the creeps, to be honest. Anyway, watch out for room 305. They keep calling for towels, but I think they're running some kind of party up there." The rest of the shift was torture. Every time the elevator doors opened, my heart leaped into my throat. Every man in a dark coat who crossed the lobby sent a spike of adrenaline through me. I was terrified the robbers from the store would come back. Maybe they thought I saw their faces. Maybe they thought I could identify them. I was a loose end. And this other man, the one who paid my bills, the one who sent anonymous money, the one who watched me. Was he protecting me? Or was he just a different kind of danger? I got home as the sun was just starting to tint the gray city sky with a weak pink. I was exhausted, my shoulders screaming in protest. I unlocked my door, pushed it open, and almost tripped on something. Another envelope, plain white, on the floor, just inside my apartment. I stared at it. Someone had been here. Someone had opened my door. I checked the lock. It wasn't broken. They had a key, or they knew how to get in without one. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was heavy, just like the one the driver had given me. Inside, there was no note, just cash, a thick stack of hundreds. It had to be $5,000. I felt sick. This wasn't a gift. It was a chain. It was a message. I can get to you. I can get inside your home. I shoved the money into the freezer with the rest, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and, embarrassingly, a sliver of relief. This money meant Mason's asthma medication for the next 6 months. It meant I could buy him new shoes. It meant I could breathe, just a little. And I hated that. I hated him for it. The next few days were a tense, quiet nightmare. I went to work. I took Mason to school. I came home. Every shadow looked like a man. Every car that slowed down was a threat. The man in the Italian suit didn't come back to the hotel, but the feeling of being watched never left. It was like a second skin, a constant, low-grade hum of terror. While I was drowning in fear of shadows, Luca Moretti was dealing with the monster who'd created them. He stood in the cold, damp air of a warehouse on the docks, the smell of fish and diesel fuel heavy in his lungs. Before him, bound to a steel chair, was his lieutenant, Vinny. A man he'd known for 15 years, a man who had eaten at his father's table. It was a simple robbery. Luca, Vinny spat, blood dripping from his split lip. A score. It went bad, that's all. Luca stood in the darkness, just outside the single bare bulb that illuminated Vinny's terrified, defiant face. It was sloppy. Vinny, and you are never sloppy. 2 junkies with unregistered pieces, at the one place I stop. At the one time I'm without a full detail, it's insulting. I don't know what you're talking about, Vinny muttered, staring at the concrete floor. Luca stepped into the light. His face was calm, his suit immaculate. He looked like a surgeon, not a killer. You knew I was cutting you out, he said, his voice quiet, conversational. The new shipping manifests. Your name wasn't on them. Vinny's head snapped up. That was my father's route. You give it to that clean shirt cousin of yours? The business is changing, Luca said, his voice hardening. My father's way. It ends. The drugs, the street-level war. It's too loud, too dirty. We're moving everything into legitimate channels. Real estate, logistics, imports. I told everyone this. Legitimate? Vinny laughed, a harsh, wet sound. You're going soft. Luca, your father would be spinning in his grave. You, with your fancy college degree, think you're better than us. I'm smarter than you, Luca corrected him. You reached out to the Albanians. You offered them my routes, my head, in exchange for a piece of their territory. You set me up at that corner store. Vinny's face went white. Luca picked up a small, heavy ledger from a nearby table. I found your private books, Vinny, the payments, the meetings. You thought you were smarter than me. You weren't. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The cold fury radiating from him was more terrifying than any scream. He missed his father's strength, the old man's simple, brutal code. But his father's way was a dying way. This desire to go legitimate, to wash the family name, it wasn't just about business, it was about survival. But it had created enemies. Not just outside the family, but within. Vinny was the first. He wouldn't be the last. Luca nodded to the man standing in the shadows behind Vinny. Clean it up. Send a message to the Albanians. Tell them their offer was rejected. He turned and walked out of the warehouse. The sound of Vinny's sudden, desperate begging cut short by a single, muffled shot. He didn't look back. His mind was already elsewhere. It was on a pale woman with haunted eyes, a woman who had no idea what kind of world she had just touched. My breaking point came 3 days later. It was a Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from the diner, my feet aching, my apron smelling of stale coffee and grease. Mason was with Mrs. Petrov. I was walking up the stairs to my landing when I saw him. My landlord, Mr. Henderson, a small, weasel-faced man who always looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Miss Jameson, he said, blocking the hallway. His voice was oily. We have a problem. Mr. Henderson, I said, my heart sinking. I paid the rent, I paid this month and last month. I'd used the anonymous money, dropping a money order in his slot. You paid the rent, but he agreed, smiling. But you're a liability. I've had complaints, late-night visitors. What? I haven't had any visitors, I said, confused. Oh, it doesn't matter. You're a disturbance, and your lease is clear. No disturbances. I want you out. Out? You can't just... I have a child. You need to give me 30 days. I want you out by the 1st, he sneered. That's 3 days, or I'll have the sheriff drag you and your brat out. Your choice. You can't do this, I whispered, the panic rising so fast I felt dizzy. I was trapped. I had money, but I had nowhere to go. No one would rent to me with an eviction on my record. Watch me. He turned to go. Stop! The voice was not mine. It was deep, calm, and absolutely lethal. It came from the landing below. Mr. Henderson and I both froze. A man walked up the stairs. He was not the man from the hotel. This man was built like a refrigerator, with a shaved head and a neck as thick as my thigh. He wore a black suit that looked like it was struggling to contain him. He stopped 1 step below Henderson, which still made him taller, and just looked at him. Who the hell are you? Henderson blustered, trying to regain his footing. I'm a friend of Miss Jameson's, the man said, his voice a low rumble. There seems to be a misunderstanding about her lease. There's no misunderstanding. She's out, Henderson snapped. The large man smiled. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. No, he said, almost gently. She's not. In fact, I'm here to pay her next 3 months, in advance, and to discuss the substandard conditions of this building, the broken lock on the front door, the flickering lights in the stairwell, the pests. He took another step up. Henderson scrambled backward, his face pale. Now, you're going to go back to your office, the man continued, and you're going to draw up a new 1-year lease for Miss Jameson at her current rate, and you're going to forget her name. You're going to forget she even lives here, aren't you? Henderson just nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing. He scrambled past the man and practically fell down the stairs. The large man turned to me. His face, in the dim hallway light, was not unkind. It was just empty. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Who sent you? Was it the man from the store?" "I'm just here to help," he said. That's not an answer, Navro. I was so full of adrenaline and rage and terror that I was vibrating. That money, this is too much. I don't want it. I don't want his help. "He's watching out for you," the man said simply. He reached into his coat, and I flinched, but he just pulled out a small, white envelope. My new lease. Probably. "Tell him to stop," I cried. "Tell him to leave me alone. He's making things worse. People are asking questions. I'm being followed." "You were being followed," the man corrected me, his voice soft. "You're not anymore. The men from the store, they won't be bothering you again." The finality in his voice chilled me to the bone. He wasn't talking about jail. "He'll be by to see you tonight," the man said. "He wants to thank you himself." He placed the envelope on the small table by my door and walked back down the stairs, his footsteps heavy and silent. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was coming here, tonight, the man with no name, the man who commanded men like that. I spent the next 2 hours in a frenzy of cleaning and panicking. I picked up Mason from Mrs. Petrov's, my hands shaking so badly I could barely buckle his car seat. I fed him dinner, my mind a million miles away. I read him a story, my voice trembling. "Mommy, are you cold?" he asked, touching my arm. "Yeah, baby," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "Mommy's just a little cold. Go to sleep." He drifted off, his breathing deep and even. I sat on the edge of his bed, watching him. He was my whole world, my anchor, my why, and I had let a monster into our lives. At 9 o'clock, there was a knock. Not a loud knock, just a soft, firm rap on the door. It sounded polite. I walked to the door, my feet feeling like lead. I looked through the peephole. It was him, the man from the store, the man from my nightmares, the man I'd seen in the shadows. He was even more striking than I remembered. His dark hair was perfect. He wore a simple dark sweater and dark pants. No suit, no armor. He looked, normal, almost, but his eyes, even through the distorted peephole, were just as I remembered, dark, intense, and older than his years. I opened the door. He stood there, his hands in his pockets. He was taller than I remembered, and he filled the doorway. "Riley," he said. His voice was the one I'd heard in my head for weeks, deep, smooth, with a faint gravelly edge. "You need to leave," I said, my voice coming out stronger than I expected. I kept my hand on the doorknob, blocking the entrance. "I just want to talk," he said, "and to thank you, properly." "You've thanked me," I said, gesturing around my tiny, shabby living room. "You paid my hospital bills. You paid my rent. You sent me money. You've sent him." I meant the large man. "We're even. Please, just go." "We're not even," he said, his eyes holding mine. "Not even close. May I come in? Please. Just for 5 minutes. I'm not here to hurt you." The strange thing was, I believed him. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the world he carried with him. I hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door just enough for him to slip inside. He moved with a quiet, fluid grace. He stood in the middle of my living room, looking around. He didn't look down on it. He just observed. His eyes landed on the small and framed picture of Mason on the TV. "That's your son," he said. "His name is Mason," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. The pain in my shoulder flared, a sharp reminder. His eyes snapped to my shoulder, a flicker of something. Guilt? Regret? Passed over his face. "How is your arm?" "It hurts," I said honestly, "but it's healing. Why are you here? What's your name?" "My name is Luca," he said. "Luca," I repeated. It suited him. "Well, Luca, you've done more than enough. I don't want any more of your help. It's dangerous. Your man, he scared my landlord off. But what happens next time? What happens when you're not here? You're dragging me into something, and I want out." "I know," he said, his voice low. "I never intended for that. I never intended for any of it. What you did at the store, I've never seen anything like it. You didn't even know me." "I didn't think," I said, shaking my head. "It was stupid." "It was brave," he said, taking a step closer. I automatically took a step back. He stopped. I have enemies. Riley, the men at the store weren't just robbers. They were there for me. You stepped in the middle of something you shouldn't have even seen." "So leave," I said, my voice pleading now. "If you really want to thank me, if you really want to help, just go. Disappear. Let me go back to my life." "I'm trying to," he said, and he sounded frustrated. "I've had men watching you, to make sure you were safe, to make sure they didn't come back." "The black car," I whispered. "That was you." "Yes, it was to protect you." "It terrified me," I said. "I thought you were all one of them. I thought they were coming back to finish the job." He looked genuinely stunned. The thought hadn't even occurred to him. "No, God, no, I was just making sure." We stood there in silence for a moment, the air thick with everything unsaid. He was so different from the men in my life. My ex, Mason's father, had been all loud promises and weak apologies. This man, he was quiet, solid, and dangerous, and he looked at me like I was something he couldn't quite figure out. "I should go," he said, but he didn't move. "Yes," I said, but I didn't open the door. He looked at me, his dark eyes tracing my face. "You're an extraordinary woman. Riley Jameson." "I'm just a mom," I whispered, trying to get by. "You're more than that." He took a small step, and this time I didn't move away. He was close now, close enough that I could smell him. He smelled like expensive soap and cold night air. I wanted to see you for myself, to make sure you were real." "I'm real," I said, my voice breathless. He slowly, so slowly lifted his hand. He didn't touch me. He just hovered his fingers near my cheek. The space between his skin and mine crackled. It was the most intense thing I had ever felt. I'll take care of the landlord," he said, his voice husky, "and I'll pull my men back. If that's what you want, you won't see me again." I should have said yes. I should have screamed it. "Yes. Go. Leave me alone." But I didn't. I just looked at him, caught in the gravity of his stare. And then I did something even crazier than jumping in front of a bullet. I nodded toward the small, rusted-out balcony off my kitchen. It's hot in here," I lied. "I was just going to get some air." It was an invitation. I knew it. He knew it. He nodded, a small, slow inclination of his head. I slid the glass door open. It screeched in protest. The balcony was tiny, barely big enough for 2 people, with a cracked plastic chair and a dying plant. The sounds of the city drifted up, sirens and traffic, a constant, familiar roar. We stood out there, not speaking. The moon was high and almost full, casting a pale, silvery light. "Why did you do it, Riley?" he finally asked, his voice soft in the darkness. He was leaning against the railing, looking at me, not the city. "I don't know," I said, hugging my good arm to my body. I saw he was going to shoot you. I just moved." Just like that. Just like that, I have a son, I guess. I guess my instincts are all about protecting." "He's lucky," Luca said. To have you. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm the lucky one. I told him about Mason, about his asthma, about his laugh, about the way he drew blue lions. I told him about my jobs, about how I was always tired, about how I was always 3 steps behind on the bills. I don't know why I told him. It just spilled out. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer pity or solutions. He just listened, like he was actually hearing me. My father, he said, his voice distant, he used to say the world was divided into wolves and sheep. He told me to be a wolf. I've been a wolf for a long time. He turned to look at me, his face half in shadow, half in moonlight. But you're not either. You're something else. He was standing very close. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. My heart was doing a stupid, frantic beat against my ribs. Luca, I whispered, and it was half a warning, half a plea. I know, he breathed. I should go. But he didn't. He lifted his hand again, and this time, he touched me. His fingertips grazed my jaw, his touch surprisingly gentle. It sent a jolt straight through me, hot and sharp. I should have pulled away. I should have slapped him. I leaned into his touch. His eyes darkened. He cupped my face, his other hand coming up to rest on my waist, his touch firm and sure. He wasn't pulling me, just holding me, grounding me. You're shaking, he murmured. You make me nervous, I admitted. Good, he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. You make me something I haven't been in a very long time. And then he lowered his head and kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss, it wasn't soft, it was starved. It was desperate and demanding and full of a raw, aching need that mirrored my own. It was the kiss of a man who hadn't allowed himself to feel anything in a long, long time. His lips were firm, moving against mine with a certainty that left me breathless. My good hand came up and fisted in his sweater, holding on as if the world was tilting. I kissed him back with all the fear and loneliness and confusion I'd been holding inside. It was a collision. It was relief. He deepened the kiss, his tongue tracing my lips, asking for entrance. I gave it. He tasted like expensive whiskey and something metallic, like power. He explored my mouth with a slow, deliberate intensity that made my knees weak. His hand slid from my waist up my back, pulling me tight against him, until there was no space left between us. I could feel the hard, solid muscle of his chest, the frantic beat of his heart, or maybe it was mine. I was lost in it, in him, in the sheer overwhelming sensation of being wanted, of being seen. Mommy? The small, sleepy voice cut through the night, as sharp as a blade. We sprang apart. I was gasping, my lips bruised and tingling. Luca was breathing hard, his eyes wide and black, his hands still hovering in the air where I had been. Mom Rami? Mason called again, louder this time, a note of fear in his voice. I had a bad dream. I'm coming, baby, I called out, my voice shaking. I looked at Luca. His face was a mask of controlled fury and something else, regret. He looked shattered. I have to, I whispered, backing toward the door. Go, he said, his voice rough. He turned away, bracing his hands on the railing, his back to me. I fled. I ran to Mason's room, my whole body humming, my mind screaming. I scooped him up, my injured shoulder screaming in protest, but I didn't care. I held him tight, burying my face in his messy hair, his small, warm body an anchor in the storm I had just unleashed. When I finally, 10 minutes later, crept back into the living room, he was gone. The balcony was empty. The apartment was silent. It was as if he had never been there at all, except for the faint scent of cold night air and whiskey, and the feeling of his lips burned into mine. The morning after the kiss, I woke up with the sun, which was a lie. I hadn't slept at all. I'd spent the night on the couch, Mason's faint breathing from his bedroom the only thing keeping me anchored. My lips still tingled, a phantom memory of his. The kiss had been a drowning, a desperate, breathless collision that I hadn't seen coming. And now, in the cold gray light of dawn, all I felt was the chilling undertow of regret. I was a mother who had, for one insane moment, forgotten that. I had invited a man I didn't know, a man who admitted to having enemies, onto my balcony and into my space. Mason's voice had been a bucket of ice water, snapping me back to a reality I had almost betrayed. My phone, plugged in on the kitchen counter, vibrated. The screen lit up. A single word, Luca. I stared at it, my heart doing a painful kickflip. It vibrated again. A text message. Riley, are you okay? My hand trembled as I reached out and powered the phone off. I wouldn't. I had to put a wall up, a thick, high one. And I had to do it now. I had Mason to protect. That was my only job. My life had no room for dark, handsome, dangerous strangers who kissed like they were starving. I threw myself into routine. I made Mason breakfast, my movements jerky and too fast. I walked him to school, my eyes scanning every car, every alley. I went to my shift at the diner, pouring coffee with a shaking hand, jumping every time the bell on the door jingled. I was a wreck. But my silence was a decision. I would not answer. I would not engage. He would, I prayed, take the hint and disappear. Miles away, Luca Moretti was not taking the hint. He was, however, being pulled in a direction he couldn't ignore. He stood in the cavernous, refrigerated hold of a fish processing plant at the docks, a place his family had owned for 60 years. It was quiet, the conveyor belt still, the air thick with the smell of salt and ozone. His cousin, Dante, a man who looked more like a college professor than the family's new logistic manager, held up a tablet. The Juarez cartel is unhappy. Luca. They say you're reneging on the transport agreement. I'm not reneging, Luca said, his voice flat. He hadn't slept either. The memory of her, the taste of her, was a fire under his skin. I'm changing the terms. The old routes are burned. Too many eyes. We use the new, legitimate shipping lanes. They pay the new rate, or they find another way to move their product. They don't like it, Dante warned. They're old school. They think you're getting soft. Let them. Luca rubbed his temples. He was trying to drain a swamp while fighting off the alligators, and all he could think about was her. He pulled out his phone. He'd called her twice, texted her once. Nothing. Just the dead, empty void of a phone turned off. Gino, the mountain of a man who served as his shadow, stepped forward. Boss, that's not our only problem. Speak, Luca commanded. Vinny's people are talking, Gino said, his voice a low rumble. The ones we let walk. They're scared, but they're talking to the Albanians, and they're talking about the woman. Luca froze. The blood in his veins turned to ice. What? About her? They're putting the pieces together, Gino said, his face grim. The corner store, the anonymous hospital stay. They know a civilian woman was involved, and they're trying to find her name. They think she's your weakness. The room tilted. This was the one thing he had dreaded, the one scenario he had pulled his men back to avoid. By trying to protect her, he had painted a target on her back. He'd been so careful. But that kiss, his visit, it had been selfish, reckless. Find out who's asking, Luca ordered, his voice a lethal whisper. I want names. I want them off the street by sundown. And get a car on her. Now. Not a visible one. I want a ghost. Do you understand? On it, Gino said, already moving. Luca dialed Riley's number again, straight to voicemail. Damn it! He had to warn her. He had to get to her. He had started a fire, and she was standing in the middle of it. I didn't know about any of that. I just knew the paranoia was back, sharper and colder than before. I picked Mason up from his after-school program, the late afternoon sun casting long, spooky shadows across the playground. I kept looking over my shoulder. The black sedans were gone. Luca had kept that much of his word, but their absence was worse. It felt like the locks had been taken off the doors. A car idled at the corner, a beat-up gray sedan, not a fancy black one. A man was at the wheel, smoking, his face obscured by the glare on the windshield. I pulled Mason's hand. "Let's go this way, baby. It's a shortcut." I ducked down a side street, my heart hammering. I was being stupid. It was just a man in a car. But my instincts were screaming. I risked a glance back. The gray sedan had turned the corner. It was following us, slowly. "Okay, Mason," I said, my voice high and tight. "We're going to play a game. It's called Quiet Mouse. We have to get home as fast as we can and not make a sound. Can you do that?" He nodded, his eyes wide, sensing my panic. I half walked, half ran the last 2 blocks. I fumbled with my keys at the building's front door, my injured shoulder throbbing. I got the lock open, pushed Mason inside, and slammed it shut. Just as the gray sedan pulled up to the curb, the man got out. He wasn't like Luca's men. He wasn't in a suit. He was thin, in a stained windbreaker, with greasy hair and a mean, pinched face. He looked at the building, then started walking toward the door. I grabbed Mason's hand and bolted up the stairs. "Go, go, go," I whispered, pushing him. I got to my apartment, unlocked the door, and threw us both inside, ramming the deadbolt home just as I heard the front door downstairs open and close. Heavy, slow footsteps on the stairs. "Mommy?" Mason whimpered, his face pale. "Who is that?" "It's no one, baby," I lied, my voice shaking. We're going to play another game, in the bathroom." I grabbed him, rushed us into the tiny, windowless bathroom, and locked the door. I turned on the tub faucet, the sound of rushing water deafening in the small space. I shoved a towel against the crack under the door. Then we waited. The footsteps stopped outside our apartment. I held Mason against my chest, my hand over his mouth, his little body trembling. I could feel his heart beating against mine. A knock, soft, almost polite. "Miss Jameson Riley, you in there?" I squeezed my eyes shut. Maybe he would think we weren't home. Then a scrape, the sound of metal on metal at the lock. He was picking it. My breath hitched. I fumbled for my phone, the one I had turned back on just an hour ago. My fingers were numb. I dialed 911. "Police, fire, or ambulance?" The voice was bored. "There's a man. He's breaking into my apartment," I whispered. My voice choked with terror. "I'm in the bathroom with my son." "Address?" I gave it to her. "Is he in the apartment now, ma'am?" "He's at the door. He's..." Crack! It was the sound of my door jamb splintering. The man had kicked it. "He's in," I sobbed, pulling Mason into the bathtub, shielding him with my body. "He's in the apartment. Please, hurry." "We'll dispatch a car, ma'am. Stay on the line." I heard him walking. "Rummig. I know you're in here. Bitch. His friends can't help you now." The bathroom doorknob jiggled. He knew. He rattled it, then kicked it. The cheap, hollow door shuddered. "Mommy," Mason cried, his voice muffled against my chest. The man kicked it again. A hinge splintered. And then, from the living room, a new sound, a deep, furious roar. "Get away from that door!" It wasn't the police. It was Gino. I heard a crash, a grunt of profound pain. The sound of a heavy body hitting the wall, scuffling, yelling, then a sickening, wet thud. And then, silence. Just the sound of the running water in the tub. I stayed frozen for a full minute, then a new knock, this one on the bathroom door. "Miss Jameson Riley, it's Gino. Mr. Moretti's man. Are you all right? The man is dealt with. He won't be getting up." I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I turned off the water. I unlocked the door. Gino stood there, his chest heaving. His knuckles were raw and bloody. The man in the windbreaker was a heap by the front door, which was hanging off its hinges, the frame completely shattered. He was not moving. Another of Luca's men, one I didn't recognize, was already on the phone, speaking in low, rapid Italian. I couldn't speak. "We were outside," Gino said, his voice rough with adrenaline. "We saw him. We're sorry we didn't get here before he broke the door. You You were still watching me?" I stammered. He told you to go." "He told us to pull back, ma'am," Gino said, his face a mask. "Not to leave. He knew this might happen. He's on his way." Rage, sudden and hot, burned through the terror. "No, I don't want him here. I don't want any of you here. Look at this. Look at my home. You did this. You brought this to me." "Ma'am, you need to be calm." "I will not be calm. I want answers. I want—" The sound of footsteps pounding up the stairs cut me off. Luca burst into the apartment. He didn't even look at Gino, or the body. His eyes found me, clinging to Mason, and then snapped to the shattered bathroom door. His face, which had been pale, turned a terrifying cold white. The fury radiating from him was so intense it was almost a physical force. "Oh, get him out of here," he snapped at Gino, pointing at the body. "Call the cleaners. I want this place sterile in an hour. Get a new door, steel frame, solid core, now." "No," I shouted, clutching Mason tighter. "You don't get to give orders here. This is my home, and you are not welcome." Luca looked at me, his chest rising and falling. He was breathing like he'd run a mile. "Gino," he said, his voice softer but steel-edged, "take Mason into his bedroom. Put on a cartoon. Something loud." "No," I cried. "He stays with me. You stay away from him." "Riley," Luca said, taking a step. I flinched, pulling Mason behind me. Luca stopped, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked broken. "Riley, please, just 5 minutes. I need him not to hear this, please." I looked at Gino. The massive man looked sad. He knelt, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Hey, Mason, that was a scary game. How about we go watch some TV? I bet I can find Captain Crunch." Mason, terrified by the yelling, just nodded and let Gino lead him into his room. The door shut. We were alone. The only sounds were the distant, useless wail of a police siren, finally arriving, and the dripping of the tub faucet. "You lied to me," I whispered, my voice vibrating with the force of my terror and rage. "Who are you?" Luca closed his eyes for a bare second. When he opened them, all the walls were down. There was no charm, no mystery, just a raw, exhausted truth. "You asked me who I was," he said, his voice flat. "You thought I was a friend of the man you saved." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice rising. "There was no friend, Riley," he said, his eyes locking on mine. "It was me. You didn't push me. You took a bullet for me. My mind couldn't, it wouldn't, I breathed. My name is Luca Moretti." The name still meant nothing, a fancy Italian name. He saw the confusion on my face and took a deep, painful breath. "The Moretti crime family, my family, we've run this city, the parts in the shadows, for 80 years. Mafia." The word dropped into the air between us, heavy and toxic. Mafia, a word from movies, a word that meant this: bodies, broken doors, men with bloody knuckles. "No," I whispered. "No, you're a businessman. You have enemies." "I'm the head of the family. Riley, I'm the boss. The men at the store weren't just robbers. They were trying to kill me. And you saved my life." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I staggered back, hitting the wall. "Get out!" "Riley, let me explain. "Oh, get out!" I shrieked, grabbing a sippy cup from the counter and hurling it at him. It bounced uselessly off his chest. He didn't even flinch. "You lied to me. You stood on my balcony. You kissed me. You... The betrayal was so profound it was a physical pain, sharper than the bullet. "You brought this into my home. My son was in that bathroom crying, thinking he was going to die. Because of you. Because I was stupid enough to trust you." "I am trying to protect you," he roared back, his own control finally shattering, his voice echoing in the small, ruined apartment. You are the danger, I screamed, tears of rage and terror streaming down my face. You're not a protection. You're a poison. Everything you touch, you ruin. Look at my door. Look at me. Get out. Luca, get out of my life. And if I ever see you or your men near me or my son again, I will. I will go to the police. I'll go to the newspapers. I swear to God, I will burn you down. The fight drained out of him, leaving him hollow. He just stared at me, his face a mask of self-loathing. He had seen this coming. He had known. He nodded, a single, sharp dip of his chin. "Gino," he called, his voice dead. Gino appeared from Mason's room. Luca walked to the shattered doorway. He looked back at me, his eyes black holes of regret. "I'll have the door replaced. Tonight, a solid steel frame. Like I said, you'll be safe. Then we'll be gone." He left. I heard his heavy footsteps descending the stairs. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out, and buried my face in my hands. The sirens were getting closer. I didn't care. I just broke. Luca was true to his word. He stayed away. A team of men, silent and professional, arrived within 30 minutes. They spoke in low tones to the 2 police officers who had finally shown up, who looked confused and intimidated, and who left after taking a brief, useless report. The men installed a new door, a heavy, imposing steel one, and were gone before midnight. The silence that followed was worse than the violence. I tried to regain control. I took 2 days off work, claiming a family emergency. I scrubbed the floor where the man had bled. I tried to pretend that the 3 new, high-tech locks on my door were normal. But the world had changed. My name was out. I found out how badly a few days later. I was at the diner, trying to catch up on a double shift. The small TV mounted in the corner was on the local news. I was pouring coffee when I heard the name. An internal power struggle in the Moretti crime family, a name not spoken publicly in this city for years. The violence is rumored to be linked to a recent attempt on the life of the new Don, Luca Moretti. They showed a picture, a grainy, file photo of Luca, in a suit, walking out of a building. It was him, unmistakably. That attempt, the reporter continued, was reportedly thwarted by a Fairgate single mother, Riley Jameson. The coffee pot slipped from my numb fingers. It shattered on the linoleum. Hot coffee and glass spraying everywhere. My manager yelled my name. The whole diner was staring at me. My name on the news, linked to him. The next day, the final blow came. A call from Mason's school. "Miss Jameson, can you come in? It's about Mason. There was an incident." My blood ran cold. I ran the 6 blocks to the school. Mason was sitting on the bench outside the principal's office, his face streaked with tears, his lips split and bleeding. "What happened?" I gasped, dropping to my knees in front of him. "Baby, are you okay?" The principal, Miss Gable, came out, her face pinched. "Miss Jameson, a word, please, in my office." I followed her, my hand on Mason's shoulder. "Mason got into a fight," she said, sitting behind her desk. "He hit another boy, Peter." "Mason doesn't hit," I said, stunned. He's not." "Why?" "Peter was teasing him," Miss Gable said, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Apparently, Peter's parents watched the news. He was telling Mason that his mother was a mobster's girlfriend. He said your family were killers." My breath left my body. I couldn't speak. It was here. The poison, it had found my son. It had found the one clean, good thing in my life, and it was turning him into something he wasn't. I collapsed into the plastic chair. I put my head in my hands, and a sound tore out of my throat, a dry, racking sob I couldn't contain. All the fight, all the rage, all the strength I'd been clinging to, it was gone. "I'm sorry," I choked out, my shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry. It's not true. I'm just trying to protect him." Miss Gable just looked at me with a cold, professional pity that was worse than any anger. I walked Mason home, his small, cold hand in mine. He was silent the whole way. I cleaned his bloody lip. I put him to bed. I sat in the dark living room staring at the new, imposing steel door. I was a prisoner in my own home, and the danger wasn't just outside, it was inside me. There was a knock, a soft one. I knew who it was, the only person it could be. I opened the door. Luca stood there, and he looked worse than I did. He was unshaven, his eyes bruised with exhaustion, the power, the control. It was all gone. He just looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. "I saw the news," he said, his voice a low rasp. "About the school, about your son, Riley. I am so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it, Luca," I whispered, my voice raw from crying. "They're calling my son a mobster's kid. He got in a fight. He's 6. He leaned his head against the door jamb, his eyes closing. He looked utterly defeated. "I know." "Why?" I asked, the anger gone, replaced by a deep, hollow ache. "Why is this your life? Why did you lie to me?" He was silent for a long time, just breathing in the hallway. "I was born into it," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "My father. He wasn't a good man. He was a hard man. He taught me this." He gestured vaguely. This life was the only thing that mattered. Power, family, respect. He opened his eyes, and they were dark with a pain that was decades old. When I was 12, I watched him. He ended a man's life, right in front of me, for a perceived slight. I swore to myself that day I would never be him, that I would be smarter, that I would fix it. "Fix it?" I scoffed, hollowly. "This looks fixed to you?" "I've been trying," he said, and for the first time, a spark of passion lit his dead eyes. "For 5 years, since I took over, I've been trying to move the money, to make it legitimate. Real estate, logistics. I'm trying to build things, not just break them. But the old guard, my father's men, they don't want change. They like the violence. The man at the store, that was them, trying to stop me, trying to stop the change." He paused, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. "And then, there was you. You're everything this world isn't. You're good. You're decent. You threw yourself in front of a bullet for a man you didn't even know. Your strength. Riley, I've never seen anything like it, and I wanted to be near it. For a minute. It was selfish. I put you and your son in danger because I just wanted to feel something clean." His confession, his raw, unvarnished pain, shattered the last of my defenses. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just unbearably sad. A single tear slid down my cheek, then another. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my broken pieces together, but I was failing. He hit someone. Luca. I sobbed, the words tearing out of me. "My Mason, he's not like that. He's so sweet. And this world, your world, it's making him hard. It's breaking him. It's breaking me." I couldn't stand anymore. I slid down the wall in the entryway, my back against the steel door, and I cried. I cried for the bullet, for the fear, for my landlord, for the news report, and for my little boy who just wanted to draw blue lions. He was inside in a second, the door clicking shut behind him. He didn't say anything. He just slid down the wall next to me, his shoulder pressed against mine. He didn't touch me. He just sat there, a solid, breathing presence in the dark, sharing my despair. We sat like that for a long, long time. My sobs quieted, the shaking subsided. "I'm so tired," I whispered, wiping my eyes. "I'm just so tired of fighting." "I know," he breathed, his voice thick. I looked at him. His face, in the dim light from the kitchen, was stripped bare. All the masks were gone. He was just a man, drowning in a life he never asked for. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe it was because he was the only one who understood. I leaned my head, just that little bit, until it rested on his shoulder. My good one. He went perfectly still, then, so slowly, as if he was afraid I would bolt, he wrapped his arm around me, pulling me in. I fit against his side as if I'd been carved for it. I should have been terrified. I was leaning on the most dangerous man I'd ever met. But I wasn't. I just felt quiet. "I'm sorry," he murmured into my hair, his voice vibrating through me. "For all of it, the news, the school, your landlord, that animal who broke your door. It's all my fault." "It's not all your fault," I whispered, the admission surprising me. "My life was hard long before you showed up. It was just a different kind of quiet desperation." He pulled back, just enough to look at me. His free hand came up, his thumb brushing away a tear on my cheek. His skin was rough, calloused, but his touch was unbelievably gentle. "You deserve better, Riley." "So do you," I whispered. The air in the hallway changed. The shared comfort crackled, becoming something else. The raw, desperate longing from the balcony was back. But it wasn't just hunger. It was recognition. I saw his scars. He saw mine. He leaned in, his eyes searching mine, asking a question I was too tired to deny. I gave him my answer. I closed the last few inches between us and kissed him. This kiss was nothing like the first. It wasn't a collision. It was a surrender. It was slow and deep and heartbreakingly tender. It was a kiss that said, "I see you. I'm broken, too. Hold me." His hand cradled my jaw, his other arm a steel band around my waist, holding me together. He kissed me with a depth of feeling that stole my breath, a reverence that I'd never known. It wasn't about passion, it was about connection. My fingers found their way into his thick hair, clinging to him. He groaned, a sound of pained relief, and deepened the kiss, his mouth moving over mine with a slow, deliberate care. "Riley," he breathed against my lips, as if my name was a prayer. He stood, pulling me up with him as if I weighed nothing. He scooped me into his arms, ignoring the wince from my healing shoulder, and I gasped. But I didn't protest. I just buried my face in his neck, breathing him in. He carried me into my bedroom. Mason was asleep, his door closed. The apartment was silent. Luca laid me on the bed, his movements careful, his eyes never leaving mine. He was watching me, gauging my reaction, ready to stop at any second. He toed off his shoes, then pulled his dark shirt over his head. In the pale moonlight filtering through the blinds, I saw them, scars, a long, thin white line that disappeared under his jeans, a puckered, round scar on his own shoulder, almost mirroring mine. This was a man made of old wounds. I reached out, my fingers tracing the scar on his ribs. He sucked in a sharp breath, his skin hot beneath my touch. "This life," I whispered. "It leaves marks," he said, his voice husky. He looked at my bandaged shoulder. "I'm sorry I gave you one." "We all have them," I said. "Mine are just newer." He lay down on the bed next to me, propped on an elbow, and just looked at me. His hand came up, his fingers gently tracing my face, my jaw, the line of my throat. His touch was reverent. It wasn't the touch of a lover. It was the touch of a man who had been starved of anything soft, anything real. This wasn't about sex. It was about solace. It was about two damaged, exhausted people finding a safe harbor, even if it was only for one night. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. He kissed my eyelids. He kissed the corner of my mouth. He kissed the bandage on my shoulder. A silent, profound apology. When my own shaking hands moved to the buttons of my shirt, he stilled them with his, "Riley," he murmured, his voice thick with a vulnerability that matched my own. Are you sure?" I looked into his dark, haunted eyes. I whispered, the truth raw and simple. "I'm just so tired of being alone." He nodded, a look of pained understanding passing over his face. The night unfolded with a slow, aching tenderness. He was gentle, his control absolute, as if he were terrified of breaking me. He held me, his body solid and warm against mine, and for the first time since I'd thrown myself in front of that gun, the terror that had been living under my skin finally went quiet. I fell asleep in his arms, held by the very man who was the source of my danger, and I felt for one impossible night completely and totally safe. I woke to the thin, gray light of dawn. The first thing I registered was the warmth, a solid, heavy heat pressed against my back, an arm draped over my waist, holding me possessively even in sleep. He was here, in my bed, the man who was a living, breathing contradiction of safety and terror. My body was humming from a night of, not passion, but a desperate, clinging solace. We had fallen asleep in the wreckage of my living room, only to move to the bed when the cold crept in. 2 survivors on a lifeboat. But now, with the sun, the reality of it came crashing in. I slid out from under his arm, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. My shoulder ached, a dull, familiar throb. I pulled my robe on, my hands shaking. I looked at him, in sleep. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a Don. He was just Luca. His face was younger, the lines of stress and command smoothed away. His bare shoulders and back, turned toward me, were a map of old violence. The scars, pale and silver, looked like tally marks. My stomach churned with fear. What had I done? I had a child in the next room, a child whose lip was still swollen from the poison this man had brought into our lives. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee, my movements mechanical. I was measuring out the grounds when he appeared in the doorway, barefoot, wearing only the dark pants from the night before. His torso was lean and defined, and the scars were even more stark in the morning light. He didn't say good morning. He just watched me. Riley. My name on his lips was a physical thing. I flinched, my hand tightening on the coffee scoop. "You should go," I whispered, not looking at him, "before Mason wakes up." "I'm not going to." His voice was rough with sleep, but firm. I turned around, my anger from the night before resurfacing, but it was hollow now, eaten by fear. "What is this? Luca, what was last night? A confession, an apology, a one-night, whatever it was." "It was the truth," he said, walking into the kitchen. He was too large for the small space. He leaned against the counter opposite me, crossing his arms. The movement flexed the muscles in his chest and arms, and I saw a small, puckered mark near his ribs I'd missed. Another bullet. "The truth is," I said, my voice trembling, "my son got in a fight yesterday because of you. The truth is, my door is made of steel, and I'm a prisoner in my own home. That's the truth." "I know," he said, his voice low, "and I'm not going to leave you to deal with it alone." "So what?" I snapped. You move in? You play house? You and your men? And your cleaners? What kind of life is that for him?" I jerked my head toward Mason's room. "A safer one than the one you have right now." "Safer?" I laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "You are the danger. You said it yourself. You're trying to change things. You're at war. You don't offer safety. Luca, you're a target, and standing next to you. It just makes me, and my son, part of that target." He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face. "I am trying," he said, his voice raw, "to make it clean, to make it something I can live with, something that won't hurt people like you." I looked at him, at the raw exhaustion in his face, the self-loathing he didn't bother to hide. I saw the man from the balcony, the one who kissed me like he was drowning. "Are you serious?" I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a desperate, hopeless need to know. "Are you really? Are you trying to get out, to make it clean, or is that just a lie you tell yourself?" I took a shaky breath. "Because if you're not, if this is just who you are, you have to go. You can't be near Mason." He stared at me, and I could see the internal war raging behind his eyes. He could have lied. He could have promised me a white picket fence, a normal life. It would have been so easy. He didn't. "I am serious," he said, his voice vibrating with a conviction that chilled me. "I'm going to burn the old way down, Riley. I'm going to rip out the rot my father left behind. I am going to build something legitimate, something that lasts." He took a step closer, his hands still crossed, as if he was physically restraining himself from touching me. "But you were right," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "It is a war. To cut out this poison. I have to fight it, and it is going to fight back. It will get worse. Before it gets better, it will be bloody, and it will be dangerous. That is the only truth I have to offer you right now." His honesty was a slap, a cold, hard confirmation of my worst fears. He wasn't offering me peace. He was offering me the center of the storm. "So what do you want from me?" I whispered, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. "I want," he said, his voice thick. He uncrossed his arms. "I want you to let me protect you, properly, not from the shadows, not with anonymous envelopes. Let me be here. Let me keep you and Mason safe while I finish this." "How?" I asked, the word a small, broken sound. "How can you keep us safe when the danger is you?" "By being right here," he said. "By putting myself between you and anyone who tries to get to you." The news, I learned over the next few days, had not died down. My name was permanently linked to his. Rival factions, the Albanians, the old guard families Vinny had been tied to. They were all watching. They had found his weakness. It was me. And my 6-year-old son. But a strange thing happened. Luca didn't just send men. He showed up. He didn't move in. I wouldn't have let him, but he was just there. Gino. His face grim but professional, would be parked at the end of the street in a new, nondescript sedan. Luca would come by in the evenings, after I got Mason from school, after I'd locked the steel door. At first, it was tense. Mason would hide behind my legs, his eyes wide and fearful. This was the man who had been there the night of the scary game. One evening, I was trying to cook dinner, my shoulder aching, while Mason sat at the kitchen table, struggling with his homework. He was supposed to be writing his name, but his letters were backward, and he was getting frustrated, his pencil tearing the paper. "I can't," he finally yelled, throwing the pencil down. "It's stupid." "Mason," I warned, my patience frayed thin. "Pick it up." "No." Before I could say another word, Luca, who'd been sitting silently on the couch, was there. He didn't say anything to Mason. He just picked up a new piece of paper and a thick red crayon. He sat down in the small chair next to my son. "M," he said, his voice quiet. He drew a large, perfect M. "It's just mountains. 1, 2. Mason watched him, his lower lip trembling. "A," Luca said. "That's just a tent with a belt." He drew it. "S, a snake. O, a circle. N, 2 mountains, but one fell over." He slid the paper to Mason. "Your turn. Make the mountains." Mason hesitated. He picked up the crayon. He slowly drew a wobbly, but recognizable M. Luca nodded. "Good, now the tent." I stood by the stove, my hand over my mouth, and watched this man, this mafia boss, who had men killed, who had kissed me with a desperate hunger. Patiently, gently, teach my son how to write his name. He wasn't just a criminal. He wasn't just a monster. He was a man. A man struggling, drowning, but still trying to be better. Later that night, after Mason was asleep, we sat on the couch in the dark. The silence wasn't as tense anymore. "Thank you," I whispered, for that, with him. "He's a good kid," Luca said, his voice low. He was staring at the framed picture of Mason, the one I'd taken last summer. All gap-toothed grin. "He's all I have," I said, the words pulling from a deep, scarred place. "His father, the one I told you about, he wasn't just mean, Luca, he was abusive." Luca's head snapped toward me, his eyes dark. Not to Mason, I was pregnant. He liked to break things. Plates, doors, my confidence. I hugged my knees to my chest. He told me I was stupid, that I was lucky to have him, that no one else would ever want me. And for a long time, I believed him. When he stole my money, when he left, I was devastated, but I was also relieved. I finally looked at him. I've spent the last 6 years protecting Mason, not just from scraped knees, but from that kind of man, from that kind of violence. Luca didn't move for a long time. His jaw was so tight I thought his teeth might crack. When he finally spoke, his voice was a raw rasp. "I'm not him, Riley." "I know," I whispered, and the terrifying part was, I meant it. His violence wasn't the weak, petty rage of my ex. It was something else, colder, more controlled, and in a strange way, more honest. He didn't just help with homework. The next day, I came home from the diner to find my fridge full, not just with basics, but with food, fresh fruit, good cuts of meat, the expensive kind of juice Mason loved. There was no note. It was just done. He was becoming a part of our lives, a dangerous, terrifying, and unbelievably comforting part. "I want to take you somewhere," he said a few days later, "just for the weekend, out of the city, away from all this." My first instinct was to say no. "I can't. My job's Mason's school." "It's Friday," he said. "Your manager at the hotel thinks you have a family emergency. Your boss at the diner thinks you're sick. You have 2 days. Please, I have a place. It's safe. The safest place I know." I looked at Mason, who was listening, his eyes bright. He hadn't been out of our 2-block radius in weeks. He hadn't played in a park. He was as much a prisoner as I was. "Okay," I said. "Okay, we'll go." The place was a 2-hour drive up the coast. We went in a black armored Escalade that made my stomach churn. Gino drove, his face a grim mask in the rearview mirror, but Luca sat in the back with us. He'd brought a tablet, and he and Mason played a quiet car racing game, the small sounds of it filling the tense silence. The house was not a mansion. It was a small, weathered gray cottage perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was isolated, beautiful, and the wind coming off the water was so clean it scoured my lungs. "This was my mother's," Luca said, unlocking the door. She hated the city. She used to bring me here. The weekend was normal, terrifyingly, breathtakingly normal. Gino sat in the black SUV at the end of the long driveway, a silent, suited gargoyle. But here, on the private beach, it was just us. I watched Luca, this man of shadows, teach my son how to skip stones. I watched him help Mason build a lopsided sandcastle. He was patient. He was present. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't taking calls. He was just there. That night, after Mason was asleep in a small guest room, Luca and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, listening to the waves crash. I've never seen him like that," I said, my voice thick. "So happy." "He deserves to be," Luca said. He was drinking a whiskey, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. I'm falling in love with you, Luca." The words just came out. I hadn't meant to say them. My hand flew to my mouth. He went still. The sound of the ocean seemed to rush in, filling the silence. He put his glass down and turned to me, his face unreadable in the dark. "Riley," he breathed. I'm terrified of you." I rushed on, the words tumbling out. "I'm terrified of your life, and I'm terrified of what it's doing to my son. But I see you. I see you trying. I see the man who teaches my son to write his name and who shows him how to skip stones. And I'm falling in love with him." He reached out and cupped my face, his hand rough and warm against my cold skin. His eyes were dark and full of a pain that mirrored my own. "I'm falling in love with you, too. Riley," he whispered, his voice cracking. I think I have been since you took that bullet for me." He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, starving kiss from the balcony or the tender, healing kiss from my bedroom. This was new. It was sure. It was a promise. It was full of a love that was as terrifying as it was beautiful. We stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, the cold wind forgotten. It was a perfect, fragile peace, and I, for a second, let myself believe it could last. The drive back on Sunday afternoon was quiet, happy. Mason was asleep in his car seat, clutching a large spiral shell Luca had found for him. I was in the passenger seat this time. Luca was in the back. Gino was driving. I was actually relaxed. My shoulder didn't even hurt. We were on a 2-lane highway, winding through the forested hills outside Fairgate. "Thank you, Luca," I said, looking back at him. I needed that more than you know." He smiled, a real, unguarded smile that lit up his whole face. Me too. Up ahead, a dark blue sedan was parked sideways, blocking both lanes. Gino slowed the Escalade. "Boss," he said, his voice instantly hard. Luca was already moving. "Gino, reverse now!" But as Gino slammed the car into reverse, a heavy-duty truck, one of those massive construction pickups, screamed up behind us. Hitting us so hard, my head snapped back, colliding with the headrest. The impact shunted us forward, pinning us. "No," I breathed. It happened so fast. Men in dark suits boiled out of the car in front, carrying automatic weapons. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a scare tactic. "Riley, get down! Get on the floor!" Luca roared. The world exploded. The sound was deafening. A thump, thump, thump of gunfire that was nothing like a movie. It was loud, percussive, and visceral. The armored windows on my side starred and cracked, but held. The driver's side, however, did not. Gino's window shattered. He slumped forward over the steering wheel, his side of the car riddled with holes. "Gino!" Luca yelled. I didn't think. I unbuckled, my body moving on pure, maternal instinct. I threw myself into the back, over Mason's sleeping body, curling my own around his car seat. "Stay down, Mason!" I screamed, though he was still strapped in. "It's okay, baby, it's just a game, loud noises." My eyes were squeezed shut. The car was shaking with the impacts. Then, a different sound, a sharper, more precise crack. Crack, crack. I opened my eyes. Luca had a gun, a sleek black handgun that had appeared from nowhere. He had shoved the back door open and was using it as a shield, returning fire. He wasn't panicked. He was cold, efficient, lethal. He wasn't my lover. He wasn't Mason's playmate. He was the Dawn. He fired 3 more times. I heard a scream, a different kind of scream. "Stay down," he yelled at me. He launched himself from the back seat into the front, shoving Gino's lifeless body off the steering wheel. He slammed the car into drive. "Hold on." He stomped on the gas. The Escalade roared, its powerful engine screaming. He didn't go around the car. He went through it. The sound of metal tearing, of glass exploding, was the most horrific sound I had ever heard. We smashed into the sedan, pushing it, spinning it off the road. I was thrown against the seat, my body shielding Mason's. He didn't stop. He was driving with one hand, his other still holding the gun, firing back at the truck behind us. He swerved, the tires smoking. We were free. He drove. He didn't slow down. His foot planted to the floor. The wind roared through the shattered windows. He drove for 10, maybe 15 miles. His face a mask of cold, white-hot fury, his eyes checking the rearview mirror every second. Finally, he veered off the highway, onto a gravel access road, and slammed on the brakes, disappearing into a copse of trees. He killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the hot, damaged engine. And by Mason. He was awake now, and he was screaming. A raw, high-pitched wail of pure, unadulterated terror. My whole body was shaking. I couldn't feel my hands. "Shh, baby, shh," I sobbed, fumbling with his car seat buckle. "It's okay. Mommy's here." It's over. I pulled him into my arms, his small body vibrating, his face buried in my neck. Luca was just sitting there, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his chest heaving. The gun was on his lap. He looked at Gino. Damn it, he breathed, hitting the dashboard, a single violent motion. Damn it all. He turned to me. His face was broken. Riley, are you hit? Are you hurt? No, I whispered. I was numb. We're okay. I looked at him, at the gun, at the dead man in the seat next to him, a man who had been alive just 5 minutes ago. I looked at my son, who was crying so hard he was making himself sick. The beach house was a lie. The normal, it was all a lie. This was the truth. This was his life. This was the war he'd promised. This isn't a life, Luca, I whispered, my voice dead. This is just, it's fatal. Riley, I'm sorry. I thought that road was supposed to be safe. Nothing is safe, I cried, the numbness cracking, revealing the hysteria beneath. Don't you get it? Nothing with you is safe. He's dead, Luca. Gino is dead. That was for you. That was meant for you. And we were right here. My son was right here. I will find them, he growled, his voice pure venom. I will. And then what? I sobbed. More dead bodies, more ambushes, more of this. Until one day, it's not Gino. Until it's you or him? I couldn't even say Mason's name. He had no answer. He just stared at me, the cold fury draining from his face, leaving only a hollow, defeated despair. He knew I was right. I love you, I said, and the words felt like broken glass in my throat. God help me, Luca, I love you. I think I see the man you're trying to be. I love him. His head snapped up, his eyes wide, a desperate, drowning hope in them. Riley. But I can't, I choked out, crushing Mason to my chest. I can't. Look at him. Look at him. He's just a little boy. I can't choose you. I can't choose this. I can't keep him in harm's way. Because I love you. I have to protect him. That's my only job. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the decision solidifying, as hard and cold as the gun on his lap. I'm leaving, I said. I'm leaving Fairgate. I'm taking Mason, and I'm going somewhere. Somewhere you can't be found. Somewhere we can't be found. No, he whispered. Riley, please, don't do this. I can fix this, I can end this. You can't, I said, the tears streaming down my face. You can't end this. This is you. It's your world, and it's never going to be safe for him. I looked at him, my heart shattering into a million pieces. I'll pack our things tomorrow. We'll be gone by night. Luca didn't get another car. He drove the shot-up, windowless Escalade back to the city, the wind roaring through the cabin, a deafening symphony of failure. He didn't speak. I held Mason, who had finally cried himself into a raw, hiccuping sleep, his face buried in my neck, his small body trembling even in his dreams. Gino's body was a silent, terrible presence in the front seat. We didn't go back to my apartment. He drove to a high-rise garage, one of his own, and hit a button on a small remote. A steel gate rolled up, revealing a private, concrete bunker of a room. Another man was there, the man I recognized from my landlord dispute, the one Luca had called Rocco. Rocco's face was stone as he looked into the Escalade. He took one look at Gino, and his eyes closed for a single, pained second. He crossed himself, a quick, angry gesture. Boss, he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. Take him, Luca said, his voice dead. Take him. Home. To his mother and clean this. Burn it. I don't want to see it again. Luca got out, opened my door, and unbuckled Mason, lifting him from my arms. He was so gentle, his movements so careful. It was a physical contrast to the man who had driven the car through a hail of bullets. Mason didn't stir, just whimpered, his head falling against Luca's uninjured shoulder. Luca led me to a different car, a simple black sedan, and put Mason in the back seat. Buckling him in, he got in the driver's seat. He just sat there for a moment, his bloody hands on the clean steering wheel, his head bowed. "Where are we going?" I whispered. I was numb. "Home," he said, "to your apartment, for you to pack." He didn't just let me go. He helped me. The drive was silent. The city felt different, alien. When we got to my apartment, he carried Mason inside and laid him in his bed, pulling the covers up. My son, my brave little boy, was so deep in the clutches of trauma that he didn't even stir. Luca walked into my bedroom. He pulled my worn suitcase from the top of the closet. He opened it on the bed. Then he went to my dresser and just started packing. T-shirts, jeans, the few sweaters I owned. What are you doing?" I stammered, standing in the doorway, lost. "You were right," he said, his back to me. His voice was hollowed out. "You're not safe with me. You were never safe with me. I thought I could build a cage around you strong enough to keep the wolves out, but I'm the one who leads them to the door." He walked into the kitchen. He came back with the coffee can from the freezer. The one with the anonymous money, he upended it into a backpack. He added the new, heavy envelope he pulled from his own jacket. "This is..." He spoke the amount, a number so large it made me feel dizzy. "It's untraceable, clean. It's enough for you to go anywhere, to buy a house, to never work at a diner or a hotel again." He zipped up the suitcase. He zipped up the backpack. He placed them by the door. "Go somewhere warm," he said, his voice thick. "Somewhere with a beach." He liked the beach. This was it, the goodbye. It wasn't a fight, it was a surgery, a cutting away. "Luca," I whispered, the tears I thought I'd run out of burning my eyes. He turned to me. The mask was gone. The dawn was gone. His eyes were shattered. "I love you, Riley," he whispered, and the words were a confession of his own failure, which is why I have to do this. I'm poison. I see that now. I'm my father's son, and I'm burning the world down, and I'm dragging you and that little boy in with me. "No," I cried, walking to him, my hands fisting in his shirt. "You're not him. You're not." "I am," he said, his hands coming up to grip my arms, his touch desperate. "Gino is dead because of me, because I was weak, because I took you to my mother's house. I brought the war to the one clean place I had left." He pulled me to him, his mouth crashing down on mine. It was not a kiss. It was an exorcism. It was all the rage, the fear, the love, the self-hatred, poured into one final, bruising act. It was the sound of a door slamming shut. He broke away, breathing hard, his forehead resting against mine. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking, "go, and do not call me, do not write, do not send a message, do not tell me where you are, because if I know, I'll come. I'm not strong enough to stay away, and I will lead them right back to you. The only way I can protect you is to never see you again." He gave me a new phone, a new set of car keys. He walked me to the door. He kissed me one last time, a gentle, heartbreaking press of his lips. Then he went to Mason's room. He stood over his bed for a full minute, just watching him. He brushed the hair off my son's forehead, his touch impossibly tender. Then he walked out. He didn't look back. The heavy steel door clicked shut, leaving me in the ruins of my life. I was on the road an hour later. I drove until the sun came up, and then I kept driving. I found us a place 2 states away, a small, nowhere town in the foothills of a mountain range. It was the opposite of the beach. It was anonymous. I paid cash for a room at a place called the Sleepy Hollow Motel. A weekly rate. I used a fake name, Sarah Johnson. I told the man at the desk my car had broken down and we were just waiting for a part. It was a lie. We were just waiting. The room was beige. Everything was beige. The carpet, the curtains, the thin, scratchy blankets. Mason was quiet. He'd stopped talking. He just sat on the floor, drawing. His pictures were all scribbles, angry black and red lines. No more blue lions. I tried. I took him for walks. I bought him ice cream at the local diner. I read him stories, but he was gone. Trapped in the back of that Escalade, in the sound of the guns. And I was a ghost. I'd checked the local news from Fairgate, my hands shaking. Nothing. It was like Luca Moretti, and the war had vanished. I didn't know if that was good or bad. I just existed. The love I felt for him and the terror had settled into a deep, hollow ache that was my constant companion. I had no idea that Luca had no idea where I was. I had done exactly as he'd asked. I had vanished. And I had no idea that the betrayal had been deeper than either of us could have imagined. The man, the traitor, hadn't just been Vinny. It was a captain, a man named Sal, who had been in charge of Luca's own private security. He'd seen the way Luca looked at me. He'd seen the clean money being diverted, his own kickbacks drying up. He'd seen the war on the docks as a suicidal move by a boss who'd gone soft over a single mom. He'd put a tracker in the backpack, the one Luca himself had packed. While I was buying ice cream, Sal was selling my location to the Albanians, the ones Luca had humiliated. They didn't just want Luca's business. They wanted his heart. They wanted to tear it out, just as he had torn out theirs. It was a Tuesday night, a week after we'd arrived. Rain was lashing against the thin motel window. I'd just given Mason a bath, and he was in his pajamas. His small, damp head burrowed into my chest. I was humming a lullaby, my voice weak in the quiet room. "Mommy," he whispered, the first word he'd spoken in 2 days. "Yes, baby," I choked out, my heart leaping. "I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know, but we're safe here. I promise. No more loud noises." A car door slammed, right outside our room. I froze. The motel was tiny, only 8 rooms, and we were the only guests. I looked at the peephole. My heart stopped. A dark van. No lights. Another door slammed. I heard a quiet scrape at the lock. "Mason," I whispered, my voice calm, my blood turning to ice. "We're going to play the quiet game, the one from home. I want you to go in the bathroom, in the tub, and pull the shower curtain, and you do not make a sound. Do you understand me?" He just nodded, his eyes wide with a terror that was becoming his new normal. He scrambled off the bed and ran, pulling the cheap plastic curtain closed. I grabbed the heavy glass lamp from the bedside table. I turned off the light, plunging the room into near darkness. I stood by the door. It splintered open. The frame didn't just break, it exploded. 3 men, all in black, with ski masks and automatic weapons, poured into the tiny room. "Where is he?" the first one growled, fanning out, his gun pointed at the empty beds. I screamed, a raw, primal sound, and I swung the lamp. I hit him in the side of the head. It staggered him, but it didn't stop him. He grunted, turning, and backhanded me across the face. I flew backward, crashing into the small table, my head hitting the wall. The world exploded in white spots. "Stupid bitch," he spat, raising his gun. "Where's the kid? We were told there was a kid." "No!" I screamed, scrambling to my feet. "Leave him alone. Take me. Just leave him alone." "We'll take you both," a second man said, grabbing my arm, the one that had been shot. I cried out, the old wound, new wound, searing with pain. And then the front window of the motel room imploded. Glass, wood, and curtain fragments flew everywhere. A massive, dark shape came through it. It was Luca. He was in motion before he even hit the ground, his gun already firing. Crack, crack. The man holding me went rigid, 2 red flowers blooming on his chest, and collapsed. The man I had hit with the lamp spun, his gun firing wildly. The mirror over the dresser exploded. Another man burst through the shattered front door. It was Rocco. He was limping heavily, but he was moving. He engaged the third man. The room was a deafening, terrifying chaos of gunshots, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. "Get down!" Luca roared at me. I was already on the floor, crawling, crab-walking toward the bathroom. "Mason, stay in the tub!" The man I'd hit, the leader, was good. He'd taken cover behind the bed. He was firing at Luca. I saw sparks fly near Luca's head as plaster exploded. "I'm out!" Rocco yelled, his gun clicking empty. The man he was fighting, the third man, grinned and raised his own weapon. "No!" I screamed. Crack! The third man fell. Luca had shot him, but it was a fatal mistake. The leader rose from behind the bed, his gun aimed square at Luca's back. There was no time to think, just like at the corner store. I launched myself from the floor. I wasn't aiming for the bullet. I was just aiming for him. I slammed into the man's legs, a low, desperate tackle. His shot went wild, burying itself in the ceiling. He roared, kicking me off him, sending me skidding across the floor, my arm, my shoulder. It was on fire. I looked down. My sleeve was dark, red. I'd been hit. The graze. It wasn't a graze. The bullet had torn through the flesh of my bicep. The man turned, raising his gun to finish me. Luca's gun was empty. He threw it. The heavy piece of metal hit the man in the face. It was just enough. Luca was on him in a second. It wasn't a fight, but it was something primal. It was the rage of a man who had his last. Only thing threatened. I heard a sickening crunch as Luca's fist connected with the man's throat. The man gurgled. Luca hit him again and again. And then he put his hands on the man's head. There was a single, violent, final twist, a sound like a thick branch snapping. The man went limp. Silence. The room was destroyed. It smelled of sulfur, plaster dust, and copper, blood. Rocco was on the floor, clutching his leg, groaning. "Damn it, boss, my knee." Luca didn't even look at him. He was breathing like a dying animal, his chest heaving, his hands covered in blood. He was staring at the man he had just broken. He looked up at me. His eyes were not human. They were black, empty pits of violence. I was on the floor, holding my arm, the blood welling, hot and fast, between my fingers. "Riley?" he breathed, the monster receding, the man returning, his eyes focused on my arm. "No, no, no, no." He scrambled to me, ripping his own shirt off, pressing the fabric hard against the wound. I cried out. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He was chanting, his voice breaking. "God, Riley, I'm so sorry." The bathroom door creaked open. Mason stood there, his small, pale face a mask of shock. He was shaking from head to toe. He looked at the bodies. He looked at me, bleeding. He looked at Luca, shirtless, bloody, and holding me. He took one small, shaky step, then another. He didn't run to me. He ran to Luca. He threw his tiny arms around Luca's neck, burying his face in his chest. "You came," he sobbed. "You came." He looked up, his face streaked with tears. "You saved us, Dad." The word hung in the air. Dad. Luca froze. His hands, one bloody, one clean, hovered over Mason's back, afraid to touch him. I saw his shoulders begin to shake. A sound tore out of him, a guttural, choked sob. He looked at me. Over Mason's head, his eyes shattered. He couldn't finish. He crushed Mason to his chest, his other arm wrapping around me, pulling me into the embrace, and he just broke. He buried his face in my hair, his body shaking with the force of his sobs. He was crying for Gino, for me, for the man he'd just killed, for the boy who had just called him a father. "I can't," he choked out, his voice muffled. "I can't do this. I can't be this. I won't be this. Not for him, not for you." He held us, the three of us, a broken, bloody family, in the center of the wreckage. "Rocco," he said, his voice raw, but with a new, cold finality. "Call Dante. Tell him to set the meeting. Tonight, with everyone. The 5. I'm burning it down." It was a blur. Rocco, tying a tourniquet on my arm. Another black car. Not the police. Never the police. A different private clinic. This one in a different city. They stitched my arm. This time, it was deeper. They gave me blood. Mason never left my side. He just held my hand, his face pale, his eyes huge. Luca was gone for hours. He left me with Rocco, who sat outside the door, his leg propped up, a grim, silent guardian. The meeting was in the wine cellar of Il Corvo, his father's restaurant, the heart of the old world, the 5 families, the old men who had run this city for a century. Were there? They were furious. The Albanians were dead. Sal, the traitor, was dead. The war was costing them all. Luca walked in. He wasn't in a suit, and he was in the same bloody clothes he'd worn in the motel, and he was no longer a politician. He was a king declaring the end of the world. "It's over," he said. They yelled, they threatened, they called him weak, a disgrace. He just waited. When they were done, he pointed to his cousin, Dante. "He's in charge. The new business, the clean books, that's the future. You're with him, or you're with them." He threw a duffel bag on the table. It unzipped. The heads of the 2 Albanian leaders who had ordered the hit rolled out. The room went silent. "That," Luca said, his voice cold, "was the old way. I'm done with it." He pulled out a thick, ancient, leather-bound book, his father's ledger, the real one, the one with 80 years of secrets, every judge, every cop, every politician, every secret. "This is the past," he said. He tossed it into the large, empty fireplace. He poured a bottle of lighter fluid over it. "And this is what I think of it." He lit a match. The old men screamed. They lunged. Rocco, at the door, raised his gun. They stopped. "It's done," Luca said, as the flames caught, the pages curling. "The old world is gone. You can have the new one under Dante. Or you can have ashes. Your choice." He turned, and he walked up the stairs. He didn't look back as 80 years of power, 80 years of sin, went up in smoke. I was in the hospital room, Mason asleep in the chair beside my bed, his hand still holding mine. The door opened. It was Luca. He was clean. He wore jeans and a dark gray t-shirt. His face was bruised, a split lip from a fight I didn't see, and his hair was wet, as if he'd just showered. He looked lighter. The crushing weight of a century was off his shoulders. He walked over to me. He didn't stand. He didn't sit. He knelt. He knelt by the side of my bed, so his eyes were level with mine. He took my good hand. He kissed the knuckles. "The doctor said, 'You're okay,'" he whispered. "You'll heal. Again." "Luca," I breathed, my heart aching. "It's done," he said. The family, the business, it's not mine anymore. I walked away from all of it." "What? What does that mean?" "It means..." He looked at Mason, his expression so full of a fierce, protective love it stole my breath. "It means I have nothing left. No money except what I have in my pocket. No power, no men, no home." He looked back at me, his eyes clear for the first time. No shadows, no ghosts. "I'm just a man, Riley, a man with a lot of blood on his hands and a lot to atone for." He took a shaky breath. "But I'm free." He kissed my hand again. "No more lies," he whispered, his bruised lip brushing my skin. "No more war." He looked up at me, his entire future, his entire hope in his eyes. Just us. 6 months, 181 days. That's how long we've been ghosts. That's how long we've been free. Fairgate is a big city, but we live on the edge of it now, in a part of town that doesn't have a name. It's just the suburbs, the working class, lawn mowing, kids on bikes suburbs, the last place in the world anyone would look for a fallen king. Luca is no longer Luca Moretti. He is Leo Romano. His last name is his mother's. He gave up his father's in fire and ash. He works at a small, independent auto shop called Kovac Garage. He's just a mechanic. He comes home every night with engine grease under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing can get out. He's thinner, all the sharp, lethal edges sanded down, but he's solid. The restless, coiled spring energy is gone. He's just present. He works on rebuilding transmissions. He told me once, his hands dark with oil, that he liked it. He liked taking something broken and complicated, all gears and teeth, and making it whole again, making it run right. I knew he wasn't just talking about cars. I'm not a waitress. I'm not an auditor. I work part-time at the Fairgate Women's Trust, a small, underfunded nonprofit that helps single moms get on their feet. I answer phones. I sort donations. I listen. I sit across from women who look just like I did, their eyes hollow with fear and exhaustion. And I tell them, I know. I've been there. You can do this. We have a house, a tiny, 2-bedroom rental with peeling yellow paint and a chain-link fence. It has a patch of grass in the back that Mason calls the yard. There are no steel doors. There are no high-tech locks. There's just a squeaky front hinge and a welcome mat. It is the most peaceful, wonderful place I have ever known. And Mason, my son, he is thriving. The silence that had wrapped around him after the motel, the dark, angry scribbles, they're gone. He's loud. He's messy. He's 6 years old. He draws blue lions and rocket ships and, lately, pictures of our little yellow house. His nightmares have faded, but Luca's haven't. Sometimes, in the deep quiet of the night, I'll feel him jolt awake. His body goes rigid, his breath catching, his hands clenching, reaching for a weapon that is no longer on the nightstand. He's back in that motel room. He's back in that car with Gino. I don't say anything. I just touch him. I lay my hand on his chest, over his heart, until I feel it slow down, until I feel the rigid muscle soften. He'll turn, his eyes still dark with ghosts, and he'll find me. He'll pull me against him and bury his face in my hair, and just breathe. He's haunted. He will always be haunted, but he's not alone in the dark anymore. Peace isn't the absence of war. I've learned. It's the presence of love. It's the routine. It's the small, good moments that stack up, one by one, until they build a wall high enough to keep the shadows at bay. One of those moments was a Saturday. The sun was warm, the air crisp with the smell of cut grass. Mason had a new bike. It was bright red, and it still had its training wheels. "I don't want them," he announced, his lower lip jutting out. "They're for babies." "Mason, you don't know how to—" I started. "I can do it," he insisted, looking at Luca. "Leo, take them off. Please." I looked at Luca, expecting him to be the voice of reason. Instead, he just nodded. "Okay, let's take them off." "Luca," I warned, using his real name, a soft slip. He looked at me, a wrench in his hand, and smiled, that real, unguarded smile that still made my knees weak. "He's got to fall, Riley. It's the only way he learns to get up." So, they spent the next hour in the driveway. It was a beautiful, painful thing to watch. Luca, the former Don of Fairgate, his voice patient and low. "Okay, I've got you. Look ahead, Mason, not at your feet. Look where you want to go." He'd hold the back of the seat, running, his long legs bent until Mason got a little speed. Then he'd let go. And Mason would wobble. He'd panic. He'd turn the handlebars too sharp, and he'd go down. A clatter of metal and a small cry of frustration. I flinched every single time. My hands would clench, and I'd start to move. And every single time, Luca would put up a hand, stopping me. "He's okay. Let him." He wouldn't rush to pick Mason up. He'd just stand there, his arms crossed. "You good?" "My knee," Mason would sniffle, rubbing a new scrape. "It's a good scrape," Luca would say, his voice serious. "Shows you're trying. Now, get up. Let's go again." Mason would look at his knee. He'd look at Luca, and his face would set in that stubborn, determined way that was so much like the man standing in front of him. He'd get up. He'd brush himself off. He'd limp to the bike and throw his leg over. This time, Mason grunted, his face screwed up in concentration. This time, Luca agreed. It was on the 7th try. Luca let go. Mason wobbled. He overcorrected, but then he found it. The center. The balance. He was pedaling. He was doing it. He wasn't fast. He wasn't steady, but he was moving. He was riding. "Leo!" he screamed, his voice a pure, joyous shriek. "I'm doing it! Look, I'm doing it!" He rode all the way to the end of the driveway, put his foot down, and turned the bike around, his face shining with a pride that was so bright it almost hurt to look at. Luca was just watching. He wasn't smiling. His expression was one of such profound, raw emotion that I felt my throat close up. He was watching this little boy, this boy he had come to love as his own, ride a bicycle. It was the most normal, simple, beautiful thing in the world, and it was his. He had earned this. I walked over and slid my arms around his waist from behind, resting my cheek against his strong, warm back. I could feel the tension, the emotion radiating from him. "You're a good father, Leo," I whispered. He put his hand over mine, his grip tight. He couldn't speak. He just nodded, his head bowed, as we watched our son ride his bike back and forth in the Saturday sun. That night, after Mason was finally, exhaustedly asleep, we were sitting on the couch. I had my legs tucked under me, my head on his good shoulder. The TV was off. We were just sitting in the quiet. "I went downtown today," I said, my voice soft. His whole body tensed. Just like that, the ghosts were back. "Downtown? Why? Riley, I told you." "It's okay," I said, sitting up so I could look at him. "It's not. It wasn't about that. I went to the courthouse." His face went pale. The word courthouse meant only one thing to him: trouble. "What happened? Did someone—" "No," I said, smiling, and I touched his face, his jaw rough with stubble. "Shh, it's good. I went to pick up some papers." I reached for the envelope on the coffee table. I handed it to him. He looked at it, then at me. His hands, the ones that could strip an engine or end a life, were almost trembling as he opened it. He pulled the papers out. He read the title, Petition for Step-Parent Adoption. He just stared at it. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. "Mason, he loves you. Luca," I whispered, my voice thick. He's never had a father. He's only ever had you. And I know Leo Romano isn't a real person. I know we're ghosts, but he's a real boy, and we want you to be his father, his real, legal, on-paper father, if that's what you want." He didn't answer, just kept staring at the paper. A drop of water hit it, smearing the ink. I looked up. He was crying. He wasn't sobbing like he had in the motel. It was silent. Tears were just streaming down his face from his closed eyes. He was completely overwhelmed. "Luca?" I whispered. He dropped the papers and pulled me to him, his arms crushing me, his face buried in my neck. I felt his tears, hot against my skin. You would give me your name?" he choked out, his voice thick with a disbelief that shattered my heart. "My name it's nothing. It's fake. Your name. His name. It's real." "No," I said, pulling back, my hands on his face. "You're wrong. You're the realest thing in our lives. I don't care what the paper says. Leo or Luca. You're his father. This is just making it official. This is just giving him your name. The one you chose. The one that's clean." He looked at me, his eyes raw, and he gave me a watery, broken, beautiful smile. "Yeah," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Yeah, I would like that." He kissed me, and his lips were salty with tears. It was the most profound kiss we'd ever shared. It was a promise, a new beginning, a family, forged in fire and now finally made whole. The past, however, was not quite done with us. A week later, we were making dinner. Mason was at the table, drawing, Luca was chopping onions, and I was stirring a pot of sauce. The small kitchen TV was on, just for background noise. And in other city news, the anchorwoman said, the landscape of Fairgate's underworld is unrecognizable. 6 months after the rumored implosion of the Moretti crime family, a new, legitimate power has taken its place. Dante Moretti, cousin to the former Don, Luca Moretti, has finalized his acquisition of... Luca's hands stilled. The knife rested on the cutting board. We both just listened. Dante Moretti has pledged to work with city officials. A new era of legitimate business, severing all ties to the violent past. They showed a picture of Dante, in a sharp suit, cutting a ribbon. And as for Luca Moretti, the anchorwoman said, her voice changing, the former boss, who declared a brutal and final war on his own family before vanishing. He remains a ghost. Law enforcement speculates he's either dead or in hiding, far from Fairgate. They showed his old picture, the grainy one, the man with the cold eyes and the expensive suit. I looked at the TV, then I looked at the man beside me, the man in the faded t-shirt, with onion juice on his hands. A ghost, and Luca said, his voice quiet. He shut the TV off. He was quiet for the rest of dinner. He was somewhere else, back in that world. The next day, he was late coming home from work, not just by a few minutes, an hour, then 2. I was not panicked. I was worried. I told myself his car broke down. I told myself he was just working late. I didn't let my mind go to the dark places. When he finally walked in, it was almost 8 o'clock. His face was pale, and the old, coiled tension was back. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice tight. I was followed," he said, his voice flat. "From the shop. A journalist. One of the vultures from the news. He had the picture. He was asking questions." My blood ran cold. What did you do?" "I lost him," he said, the words heavy with an old, familiar skill. "Took the back roads, the alleys. He's gone. But he found me. Riley. After 6 months, he found Leo." He looked at me, and all the fear I thought we'd buried was right back in his eyes. It's not over. It's never going to be over, is it? They're always going to be looking. He thought he had brought the danger back. He thought he had failed. I walked over to him. He was standing in the doorway, a ghost in his own home. "So what?" I said. He looked at me, confused. "What?" "So, a reporter found you," I said, my voice firm. I put my hands on his chest. He didn't find Luca Moretti, Dawn of the 5 families. He found Leo Romano, a mechanic who looks like a guy who vanished. He found a man with a family, a man with a life, a man who has nothing to hide. Riley, No, I said, cutting him off. "You listen to me. We are done running. We are done being scared. You walked away. You burned it down. You are free. This is our life. And we're going to live it. No more secrets, no more shadows, no more running." I cupped his face, my thumbs rubbing the tense lines on his jaw. "You are safe here, Luca. You made us safe. And I'm not going to let a ghost with a camera take that away from us, or from you." He searched my face, looking for the fear that had defined me for so long. He didn't find it. He found strength, the strength he'd always said I had. He let out a breath he'd been holding for 6 months, for 30 years. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, no more running." He kissed me, a kiss of profound, desperate relief. We made dinner again. Together, we put on the radio, some soft, old-fashioned music. We laughed. Mason, sensing the tension was gone, was dancing around the kitchen, flour in his hair. After we put him to bed, I was washing the dishes, my back to Luca. The music was still playing. I felt his hands on my waist. He turned me around, his hands sliding up my back, and just pulled me against him. He didn't say anything. He just started to move, to sway. We were slow dancing in our tiny kitchen, with the smell of garlic and soap in the air. I laid my head on his chest. I could feel his heart, a strong, steady beat beneath my ear, a beat that was no longer frantic with war or slow with despair. It was just steady. "This," I whispered, my eyes closing, "this is everything, just this." "I know," he breathed, his lips against my hair. He was right. We were being watched. Outside, in a car parked in the shadows a block away, a man sat. He was older, his face lined, one of the old guard, a man who had lost everything. When Luca burned the ledgers, he'd spent 6 months looking, driven by a cold, old-world rage. He'd found him. He'd followed Leo from the shop. He'd seen the journalist, and he'd seen the ghost. He had a gun on the seat next to him. He lifted a pair of binoculars. He looked into our kitchen window. He wasn't expecting what he saw. He didn't see the dawn. He didn't see a king in hiding. He saw a man in a cheap house, dancing with a woman, a man who looked tired and happy. He saw the drawings taped to the refrigerator, the red bicycle on the porch, the normalcy. This wasn't a rival. This wasn't an enemy. This was an ending. The old man watched for a long time. The rage, the cold need for vengeance, it just faded. It left him feeling old and tired. He put the binoculars down. He looked at the gun on the seat. He sighed, a long, rattling sound. He picked it up and put it in the glove compartment. He started the car, the engine quiet in the night. He turned and drove away. He was going to let the ghost be. The war was finally, truly over. Luca pulled me from the kitchen, his steps sure, his hands gentle. He led me to the couch. We were still moving, still swaying, his eyes never leaving mine. He kissed me. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't desperate. It was deep and sure. It was a kiss of stability, of gratitude. His hands, the ones with the grease under the nails, were so tender. He unbuttoned my shirt, his fingers brushing my skin. A soft, reverent touch. I traced the old, white scars on his chest, the map of his old life. They weren't scary anymore. They were just him. They were the price he'd paid to get here. This love. It wasn't the fiery, terrified passion from before. It was deeper. It was quieter. It was the love of two people who had seen the absolute worst of the world and of each other and had chosen to stay. It was a love built on safety, on trust, on the shared, hard-won peace of a Saturday afternoon. It was slow, and it was gentle, and it was ours. Later, we were tangled up on the couch, a blanket pulled over us. The house was quiet. I heard a small noise. Mason, he was standing in the hallway, his blanket clutched in his hand, his eyes half closed. "Bad dream?" I whispered. He just nodded, patting over. He didn't come to me. He climbed onto the couch and burrowed into Luca's side, curling up against his chest, his breathing already deepening. Luca went still. He looked at me over Mason's head, his eyes shining. He gently, so gently, pulled the blanket over our son, tucking it around his shoulders. He watched him sleep for a long time, this little boy who was now legally his. Then he looked at me. He reached out and took my hand, his calloused fingers lacing with mine. He held it, a solid, unbreakable grip. He leaned in, his voice a low, rough whisper, a promise meant only for me, in the quiet of our small, safe, yellow house. "You saved me. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We hope you enjoyed the journey of Riley and Luca. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please drop a comment and let us know. If you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we would be so grateful if you shared your thoughts about the story in English.